My final thoughts in the electronics-based laptop. This is the P650HP6-G, as in G-Sync, and this is the Pro-X model. This particular unit features the 7700HQ, a GTX 1060, one 8 gig stick of Crucial Ballistics, and 128 gigabyte NVMe drive. And the icing on the cake, 1080p, 120 hertz TN panel, and this is the most beautiful TN panel I've seen on a laptop in my life. There is no close second. So, first let's start off with the build quality. I've had this particular unit for 5 months. It is incredibly durable. The lid is aluminum. You can open it with one finger, which is freaking awesome. The underside, this is aluminum, very nice. The fans are exhaust for one fan CPU, exhaust dual fan for GPU. Aluminum bottom, aluminum top, brushed plastic here. We have an LED keyboard with a 3-zone solution here, here, and here. I'll go over that with the software shortly. Onkyo speakers, properly placed too. Nothing underneath, nothing behind, like a lot of the Asus laptops like to do. Right there. The sound quality gonna blow your mind? No, it's a laptop. The only things that sound amazing are the MacBooks, and even then, still not too good. But this is far better than most gaming laptops out there as far as speaker placement. They get plenty loud as well. You've got a pretty normal trackpad with the buttons. I do like that versus the click. It's no haptic feedback, but I do like this. You have a fingerprint reader, it's trash. Power button on the right hand side. Moving up, there's the 120 hertz panel. Let me focus in on this a little bit better for you. There we go, much better. I have brought the app size up a little bit, not doing the scaling, but if you just hold down Control and scroll up and down with your mouse, which would help if I plug that in, then you could change the size of those, just like so. Pretty cool. There is some Windows 10 stickers here and some other things right here. You're not going to have those. I put those on there. Yes, I'm dorky. It's just extra chrome metal type stickers I had laying in my office, so I thought I'd toss them on there. So, you know the specs. The interior build quality is awesome. You've got some LEDs here in the front. There's a bunch of them actually indicating that it's charging or it is doing this or that. Very, very cool. Now let's go over some of the ports. On the left-hand side, pretty basic, right? HDMI, USB 3.0, and a lot of your necessary mini display type ports. You've got the exhaust for the CPU on the left. On the back is a power plug and another USB 3, along with the exhaust ports back here. Nice little chrome trim going around that. Nothing too fancy, very subtle. Subtle's the name of the game, where I really love this laptop as much as I do. Try to zoom in, focus here a little bit better. There we are. And we've got headset and mic and all that good stuff and all these little card readers and just all the right ports you need. You know, even the little Kensington lock there, of course, Ethernet, and it's not too bad. Maybe you could use a full-size display port. Other than that, no complaints. So let's open this back up. Again, being able to do that with one hand. Awesome. So with these Clevo-based chassis, what do you get? You get really good build quality. You get machines that look like you could take them somewhere and not feel embarrassed. They're not ultra gamey. They're lightweight. This particular unit weighs less than 5 pounds. It's about 1 inch to 1.25 inches thick. When I have put this up against like the Acer Predator 15, that is a chunky laptop that just dwarfs this thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's an awesome laptop. But if you want something that's a lot more subtle, a little bit more adult-like, or whatever suits your aesthetic, personal requirements at the time, this one I particularly dig. So build quality is great. You've got a 1080p webcam up top, just where it's supposed to be. Take that, Dell XPS 15. A 1080p display for me, 15-inch panel, 1080p is where it's at. You start getting into a higher resolution. I have used the XPS 15 and its display is amazing, but if you don't use scaling, everything's going to be 1/4 this size, and that's very small. And Windows 10 scaling is better than it's ever been, but it is nowhere near where it needs to be. Yes, it's getting better, but if you've fiddled around with it enough, you know that there's a ton of stuff that just doesn't work. And if there's one thing that doesn't work, that's a little frustrating, especially when it comes to scaling. So 1080p, personally, I think is the sweet spot. Good pixel density here, and the 120 Hertz is lovely. If you've not used high refresh rate panels, before you judge, you really ought to just try one for a couple of days, and then go back to 60 Hertz, and you'll see just how great 120 Hertz is. So the software that comes bundled with this, we'll start with the Clevo Control Center. Now, unlike most software, this is not a bloaty pile of garbage. And the nice thing about these Clevo chassis is that this is all that comes on there. You don't have 30-day antivirus and all that other crap. It's just this. And if you don't want this on here, you don't have to have it. But I think it's pretty cool. So you can go to the maximum fan speed, overclock, or the custom. Of course, it's already on automatic. Want to hear what this sounds like at full go? If that sounds like a leaf blower to you, man, you've got some sensitive ears, because this camera's right on top of this machine. It's not that loud. Put your headset on, play your games, you're not going to hear this. And it never runs at maximum. It'll run at about 80% of that. And on automatic, the machine's just running. Silent. Very, very quiet. The overclock fan curve will actually set itself by default if you overclock the GPU with the software that comes within the control center. So that's pretty cool. You don't have to tick that box if you decide to overclock the GPU with the software. It will do it automatically. And of course, if you're not happy with it, you can just set it to something else. And you have your custom fan curve. Now, if there's one thing that I will give a strike against with this particular software is I do find the custom fan curves, I mean, look at this. You got the fan startup temperature, the fan stop temperature. Why would I want the fans to stop? And then full fan speed. I would prefer a more of an adjustable curve, something like an MSI Afterburner, where I can just scale it like this based on thermals. That is about the only thing that makes sense. This does not. So overclock and automatic, there's very little difference between the two, and I overclock my GPU with MSI Afterburner anyway. You cannot use the fan profile from MSI Afterburner. It does not control any fan curve on anything in here. So overclock works, automatic works for me. Your power from performance, balance, and power saving, all this can be done within Windows 10 anyway. Nothing too crazy there. Here's your camera. It's a 1080p webcam. It's no Logitech C920, but it's sure is a heck of a lot better than any of your other 720p webcams that come on your Alienwares and stuff like that. This is not going to blow your mind, but it's one of the best webcams that I've seen out of a gaming laptop yet. Your trackpad, you can disable that with the software, or you can just hit the FN key and then F1, is it? Yeah, there, disable, nothing. So that's kind of cool too. The Acer Predator has an actual button to disable that, and there's no reason to not like that other than just having a big gaudy button there, but honestly I didn't think it was a big deal. But at least I can hit the function key and F1 and turn it on, turn it off, just like that. So pretty easy. Your gaming tab is GPU switching. Oh man, okay, so this is one of the beautiful things about these chassis is that this particular laptop has G-Sync and 120 Hertz. It's magnificent. But then you have to forfeit the Optimus technology. Well, a lot of laptops either have Optimus technology or they have G-Sync. They don't offer the two. Now, the two cannot be combined at the same time. That will not work. You can either have one going or the other going. With that said, most of these laptop companies only offer one or the other. They don't allow you to switch between the two. Well, this does. Not only can I switch it from MS Hybrid, which is essentially Optimus, I can also select Discrete. Now, if you don't know what this is, Discrete means it will run off the graphics card all the time. It will not switch to the integrated GPU that's built on the CPU. So what Optimus does, or what MS Hybrid does, is that it will, under demanding loads, recruit the discrete GPU for the grunt work. And when you're just doing basic things such as surfing the web, simple tasks, it will use the integrated graphics. The purpose of that is to save battery life when you are unplugged from the wall. And instead of having maybe an hour and a half of battery life on discrete, I have seen as much as 6 hours on MS Hybrid. This isn't gaming, this is just using it like an adult. That is pretty sweet, and when you select this, it's going to ask you to restart the machine. When it restarts the machine, it will automatically flip that switch within the BIOS, and then it'll work like Optimus machine will. If you do not want to use the software to do this, you can also go into the BIOS and select it manually. When you select it here and still go into the BIOS, it still selects it manually on its own. So adjusting it here also adjusts it in the BIOS, which is why it needs to be reset. Freaking sweet. Headphone, this is just a bit of an amplification, that is basically, this will be more of a softer, gentle sound. This will have an interesting punchiness to it. Then you have your direct sound. I personally found the gaming solution to work the best, and I enjoyed that the most. But you have options. FlexiKey. All right, so as I said earlier, you have triple zone lighting within your keyboard. So here's the keyboard, here's the keyboard. So let's scroll up, let's go over to the backlight tab. Look at the color wheel. Let me focus in on this for you guys so you can really see. There's quite a few colors there. And if you just click this, pan this down, I'm gonna select, let's say here, red, boom, red. Yellow, yellow. It just takes effect immediately. If you want to go over here, that color, let's leave that yellow, maybe this one blue. You could do all sorts of funky things. If you wanted to do some effects, boy, what else can you do here? All sorts of things. Can you see that at all? Yeah. You can have it go wild. So, if you're not digging any of that, and you just want to start with the factory color, you can hit reset, regardless, save, quit, done. It works, it's responsive, I like it. The keyboard, man, it's really good. Holy cow, I cannot believe it. Seriously, there's a lot of hate on these laptops years ago, and you're going to find a lot of threads if you start to dig up information on the keyboards on these laptops. But as far as finding anything from 2016 on, good luck. Today's version of the keyboard, it's stiff, it has good travel, it feels nice, the backlight is very uniform. If you want to shut it off, you can. I really like this keyboard. I have used lately Dell XPS, MacBooks, Acers, MacBook Airs, MacBook Pros, the Magic Apple keyboards, the Asus laptops. Over the last 6 months, I've probably used 20 different keyboard devices on 20 different machines, and this one's been one of my favorite. It's been the easiest for me to use. Granted, I've probably spent the most time with it, okay? So let's be fair, call a spade a spade. I have had 5 months with this machine, so perhaps I'm just used to it, but I didn't dislike it from the start either. I enjoyed it straight away. Good keyboard for a gaming machine, very nice. So let's get down to overclocking performance. I have been able to get this GPU stable at some pretty sweet speeds. My best success is playing Black Ops 2 at 2000 megahertz. Not bad. In fact, what am I saying? That's fantastic. Normally, Overwatch, Battlefield, when you're playing a high refresh rate, monitor, and then the FPS is fluctuating up and down, my core clock speed's been anywhere between 1800 and 1950. It's hanging out in there somewhere. It rarely drops too much below that. But there you have it. I can get 150 to 200 megahertz more out of it. Right now, to verify that, I'm actually running a curve, and I've been able to kind of scale the clock speed based on a particular voltage to try to keep the voltage at low. That actually did not cool off the GPU anymore, and that's due to the fact that the fan curve on these laptops are built to scale with the temperature, and they're not a generic fan curve. I actually wish they were a generic fan curve, because then I could perhaps get some better results out of new thermal pastes and voltage adjustments. So what does that mean? That means no matter what, the GPU gets to 80 degrees. It's never been 1 degree higher than that, ever. Not one time that I can possibly recall, and I monitor this stuff heavily. That's not bad. A full-blown GTX 1060 that'll hit 1800 megahertz or higher, only capping out at 80 degrees Celsius. That's not bad. That's as good as a mini ITX GTX 1060. It really is, except this is crammed in a package that's about 1.25 inches thick. The CPU, before I did the undervolt, was running about 80 to 85, 86 degrees Celsius, still 14 to 20 degrees away from TJ Max or thermal throttling. And then once I undervolted it, which we'll go over that shortly within the BIOS, you can expect temperatures on this maybe 76 degrees, 68, 70 degrees, average 76 after playing a few hours of Wildlands Ghost Recon straight. Pretty resource intensive, and this is of course running the game at a really high frame rate, which is stressing the CPU even more. Again, love that 120 Hertz panel. So let's go into the BIOS. Now this is an electronics laptop, but it does have a custom BIOS from Obsidian. This was gifted from John. This is not something that I will ever be able to get again. This is not something that you can get unless you're an Obsidian customer. So what do you get with an Obsidian style BIOS? Cannot recommend Obsidian enough. They're very active within the community. Big help. Unfortunately, we cannot get these in the States. So what do you get? Well, you get a lot of stuff. Let's go to the Overclocking Performance menu. And you can adjust the core speed to your heart's content. It won't stick. This is an HQ chip, so before you get too excited, let's just keep it real here. Only the HK chips can be overclocked, and even that I don't currently recommend doing that, as they are heat monsters as they are. So the core voltage mode is set to adaptive, and it basically, what it says over here is just increasing this number is going to decrease the voltage. So I have a negative 115 millivolt undervolt to my CPU, which dropped temperatures, to keep it real, about 10 degrees Celsius. So now I'm like 25 degrees Celsius away from thermal throttling. That's awesome. Out of this small 15.6 inch, thin, somewhat elegant looking laptop. Memory. You will have multiple XMP profiles. When I run my 3000 megahertz RAM, which I don't currently have at the moment, it opens up XMP2, which you can also select. You'll have XMP1 and XMP2 at that point. And yeah, you can run faster RAM in here. And if you want to mess with the current solution, I'm running two 8 gig sticks of Crucial Ballistic Sport with the fancy gray heat sinks. And yeah, you can adjust quite a few things in here, including voltage. Very nice. What else do we have here? You know, just your basic stuff like I showed you guys before in the software, that the MS Hybrid or discrete switch can be done within the BIOS. So it is set to discrete, which is where I personally want it unless I am on the go. Speed step is enabled, and your hyper-threading, it's just all that stuff, right? So let's get out of here. We'll reboot. Let's talk about power. This right here is a 200 watt power supply. This is the only GTX 1060 laptop I have ever seen that has a 200 watt power supply. Most of them will have a 180 watt power supply. A lot of the MSI models, especially the thinner ones, let me focus back in here for you, will have a 160 watt power supply. And the Gigabyte Aero 14s have a 150 watt power supply. All of these laptops have the same specs. So what's so good about having an extra 50 watts? That means you can game all day long. I keep this power supply inside of a cabinet in my office. The doors are shut, there's no ventilation. I keep all my stuff in there. I keep tools in there to take apart computers, bags of thermal paste. There's so much stuff surrounding that power supply. I have nothing on top of it, but it gets slightly warm, okay? I would have no problem having my 5-year-old daughter hold onto that power supply while playing. It is not hot, it's barely warm. It's no different than me taking my hand and putting it up to my son or daughter's cheek. It feels 98.6 degrees. It runs effortlessly. I like that. That's good. Does it grant me the ability to overclock a little bit more? Who knows? Honestly, I would have to have about 20 of these things and go through them hard before I could even give you an honest answer there. But 150 watts is cutting it a little close. I've had a 180 watt power supply on one of my two Acer Predators, the G5s, and one of them would actually run very warm and start to discharge the battery to about 70%. Now, I was told that was a feature, but I was a little curious. I just wondered if it was a little underpowered. Probably not. Nonetheless, it did run much warmer than this 200 watt unit did. There's no question about that. So kudos to Clevo for shipping an adequate power supply. Kind of what, you should do. So we got plenty of ports, excellent build quality. You can open it up with one thumb, 1080p webcam, the fingerprint reader, scratch that. Nice lighting in the background, as far as the keyboard goes. 120 Hertz panel, NVMe drive. There's also room for another M.2 drive and two 2.5 inch drives. So what do you get inside the box besides this wonderful laptop? Well, you get an instruction manual with about 7 different languages and an actually well laid out instruction manual. Not that you'll use it, but it was laid out really well. I was very surprised. The driver installation disc. Now there is no DVD-ROM drive in this unit, but external DVD-ROM drives, I can get them all day long for about $17, so I'm sure you guys can probably get them for 20 to 30, depending on what country you live in and what you have at your retailer. But driver, CD, normally I'd say toss these, but this has got a lot of cool stuff on there. Things that you can hunt down from Clevo and Eluktronics and Sager and Exotic and all that stuff anyway, but nonetheless, kind of useful. Better than like a installation or driver CD that comes with a graphics card where it's way outdated to begin with. The stuff on here is a little bit more up to date, kind of harder to find. You do have the Windows 10 an actual disc. Yeah, an actual disc. Now, I love this because it's an older ISO, which means I do not particularly like the Creators Update, and I can install this and try to dodge that bullet for as long as possible. That Creators Update's been nothing but headaches for me. An extra M.2 screw, because I have room for one more. This is a sticky tape foam pad solution to put between the 2.5 inch drives. One goes here, and the other one goes right on top. And if you're using mechanical drives, they're likely to vibrate, make a little bit of chatter. So you could put that in between there, and you're back to being quiet again, along with all the screws to keep it in its place. And I mean, they kind of thought of everything. I couldn't tell you how many laptops I've had my hands on, and it really didn't come with any of the stuff here. The instruction manual was just a waste of time, and all these little extras in here. It sure as heck didn't come with a Windows disk installation. I haven't seen anybody do that in over a decade. And it also comes with an actual official Windows 10 key. Wow. Thank you, Clevo and Eluktronics, for that. All right. So this has just been nothing but pros, pros, pros. Love the laptop. What do I dislike about it? 3 things. You've heard me say it twice already. The Fingerprint Reader is a joke. That's not the fault of really much of anything except it's old hardware. It's a swiping solution. It's not that good. Even the Windows Hello machines, like some of the XPS 15s where you put your finger down, yes, they are much better, but I've actually had those miss probably 20% of the time, maybe 25% of the time, whereas this works about 10% of the time. The more I use it, the more I got frustrated with it, so I just disabled it. No big deal. I have nothing to hide, so anybody can come over here and use this laptop. Knock yourself out. Now, that's one thing. Let's see. The other thing... Let's see here. Okay. The other thing is definitely going to have to be the BIOS updates. For whatever reason, I'm going to pan this camera back up here. For whatever reason, Clevo and all the companies that are responsible for putting these machines together are keeping their BIOS for ransom. They are very difficult to get. I would say if you're lucky or you're in cahoots with somebody, maybe you can get a BIOS, and if you're fortunate enough to know how to put it on the machine, good for you. But you have to install the firmware first and then the BIOS. Fortunately, Obsidian themselves, within their Obsidian PC tool, allows BIOS updating only if you have an Obsidian BIOS on your machine. Other than that, you're going to have to obtain it through the manufacturer, and it's a slim chance they actually have it online. Excuse me. So, not being able to get the BIOS as easy as you can through any other manufacturer out there is a little frustrating for me as a hardware enthusiast. I see why they did it because I've gone over the installation with John from Obsidian, who did the work for me, and it's a little over the top, I think, for the average consumer. In fact, I know that it is. And I would have a hard time recommending or even offering a solution how to install the BIOS on here, and fear that a lot of people would brick their systems. It has nothing to do or against anyone in particular whatsoever. It's just I've installed a lot of BIOS in my day, hundreds, and it's needlessly, excessively crazy on this laptop versus just, hey, I've got an Acer Predator, let's just download it, install it, erases the block, puts it back on, done. So if they can come up with a solution for this to make it a lot easier for the customer, that would be great. So that's one of my gripes, is that getting your hands on an updated BIOS has been a little difficult. It took me a few months of searching and hunting it down and got it gifted from somebody, and then I worked out a deal with somebody else and trying to do all these things just to get a BIOS. If that turns you off from getting this machine, I completely understand. I just want to be upfront straight away that getting the BIOS for these machines, it's a little difficult. So, gosh, what else can I honestly say that I do not like about this machine? I know I said there was 3 things. We got the fingerprint reader, we've got the BIOS shenanigans. Gosh, man, it's a really tough call. Maybe there's only 2 things. That's not too bad. Oh, nope, there is a 3rd. All right, one last thing. Battery life. This is a 60 milliwatt battery. As you can see within hardware monitor here, there it is, 60206 milliwatt hours. All right, the battery can be replaced, but it cannot be improved as far as capacity goes unless there's some crazy technology where they can use this size with just a bigger battery. And to my knowledge, there is not one for this particular unit yet. So that means if you're on the go, you're going to have to use MS Hybrid anyway. No big deal. You're going to want to switch to the Optimus solution. But you're going to get between maybe 3 to 6 hours of battery life. And that's if you're on the latter end there, if you're using it gently. And if you're using it a little bit more aggressively, still not gaming, you'll get 3 something, maybe 4 hours out of it. If that's enough for you, so be it. But this is a laptop, and laptops are meant to be portable and on the go. And there's a good chance that you're going to run out of juice before your day is over. Is that a deal breaker for me? No, but I would expect it to be a deal breaker for a lot of people. You're getting a lot of hardware, a really cool build quality, and a lot of nice features for the asking price of these laptops, which this one goes for $1,250, sometimes as much as $1,400. And they're very customizable, they're very simple to take apart. In that aspect, it's very cool. And if you wanted to replace the battery with a new one, that would be no more than probably, hell, I could probably do it in 20 minutes. So that's probably the third biggest bummer. Battery life is pretty weak. Now, granted, I've had this thing unplugged for a couple hours now, and we are at 2 hours and 25 minutes remaining. So that's probably about, maybe 5 hours, 6 hours tops of usage today if I let this thing drain all the way. Nonetheless, poor-ish battery life. Fingerprint Reader is atrocious, but I would not expect that to be any different for most Windows laptops. No offense, users out there. And of course, the BIOS being held for ransom. I kid, but I'm kind of serious. That is kind of a bummer. Other than that, I mean, if you back up 5 minutes from now and just listen to all the pros that I covered with on this laptop, that should really be enough for you to kind of make your decision whether or not you want to pull the trigger on something like this. Me personally, I love it. This has been my favorite laptop of all time so far. The only things I'm looking forward to now is something more like an XPS 15 that runs cooler than this and has an OLED 120 Hertz 1080p display. Once that comes out, I will be giddy as a schoolgirl. Well, that's it for now, guys. This will probably be my final thoughts on this particular machine, so I will link every video that I have created about this machine in the description below, and if that's not good enough, just click on playlist within Bob of All Trades channel, and you will see a list of everything electronics based that I have covered over the last 4.5 months. From this point, that is all. Have a good day, my friends.